Hey everybody, how you doing? Jonathan Lipp here from the 12th Annual Big Apple Film Festival, taking place at Village East Cinemas in November of 2015. I want to welcome our guest today, Scott Kaplan from FilmBuff. He is the SVP of Global Sales at FilmBuff. So, Scott, if you can tell us a little bit about FilmBuff.
Absolutely, and thanks for having me. FilmBuff we are a film distributor, but with a digital lean, I would say, and we are also a sales agent in a lot of ways, as those two worlds have really combined over the last few years, especially in the world of independent film. So we distribute and sell films all over the world. A lot of documentaries and a lot of great narrative features every year, and we love movies, which is why we're called FilmBuff.
One of my questions is regarding the future of the online platforms. We're seeing a huge change right now. If you look back to the 1990s when you had films like Clerks and the Brothers McMullen and even the Blair Witch Project, and now the platforms are so different in terms of online distribution. What do you see as the outlook or the future of online distribution? Do you see it continuing to grow, or do you see it almost as a negative thing because there's so much content online now? I mean, they say that there's millions of hours of footage being uploaded to YouTube every minute. So do you see is it too saturated now, or is it something that's going to continue to grow?
It's a good question. I mean, I think that the amount of content being produced is higher than it's ever been, and it's just going to get higher, especially as people can make their own films, and people have selfie sticks now, and there's going to be a very blurry line between user-made content and what qualifies as a movie. I mean, you look at Camp Dakota last year. That was a film that was made by YouTube stars. That was one of the biggest hits on iTunes. But generally, digital consumption of content is just going to go up and up. There's no way that trend, kind of tapers off. The appetite for content is super high, and it's continuing to grow. I think curation is obviously really important, and yet you bring a good point up, which is, you get on Netflix or you get on YouTube and you don't know what to watch because there's so much out there. How do you find out what to watch, right? And so that's something that's being sorted out between a lot of the big players in the industry. But I think the real rise right now is in subscription VOD platforms and in streaming content. So those are sites where you pay a monthly subscription, like Netflix or Amazon Prime or two big ones. Sundance Doc Club is a big one.
Would you say subscription based is really the future of cinema today?
I'd say it's one of them. Subscription based is really replacing traditional and linear television right now. So in the same way that people pay, to get that premium content, I think you are going to still need to, at least for the next 5 years to 10 years, have to pay some sort of monthly fee to access it. So, people like, Comedy Central now has their own app. I imagine it's only a matter of time before Viacom prioritizes creating that true OTT experience that is not authenticated, meaning that you can just subscribe to Comedy Central a la carte for $3.99 a month and then have access to all those shows. But as that happens, the appetite for content from those different platforms grows, right? Because they don't just need to program a couple nights of primetime a week. They need to give you enough content where you feel like if you're paying $4 a month, that you're going to be able to dive in and have something new and fresh and interesting to watch whenever you want to watch it. So that the amount of the need for great content for programmers from subscription VOD platforms is going to grow, but ad-supported VOD or free streaming content is also going to grow, and that's going to be supported. As ad dollars. I mean, let's face it. Television viewership is going to decline and decline, especially as folks like ESPN are now going over the top, and as they move away from traditional television, ad dollars are going to eventually flow in a major way towards streaming video, and so there's going to be ad-supported VOD opportunities everywhere for filmmakers and people who are making TV and short webisodic content.
you know, merely one generation ago, literally, you go back to the let's say 50s, you know, you had 5 to 7 films in the movie theater, and that's what you watched. You know what I mean? And then television, you know, came about and whatnot, and you had your 10 shows. Now, I mean, you could watch anything from a guy's cat being, you know, doing funny tricks for a minute to a feature film right online. Anyway, my point is, would you say that it's more of a positive or negative in terms of, you know, the visual arts to now have so much, like, would you say that this amount of content is something that's a positive thing, or is it like so saturated now that you don't even know what to look at?
Yeah. I mean, I think that figuring out what to look at is it's interesting, right? It's in some regards, I think you could say that you are there's someone out there providing content for every single type of person, right? So super niche, you could be, you know, really into like the Filipino animated kung fu scene, and there will be a community of people who love that, and you can find that content anywhere. If that doesn't exist, someone should definitely produce it. But so in that sense, yes, it's great to be able to act, you know, that with the rise of content, you'll be able to find what you want. But the problem is not, you know, I think it's egalitarian in the sense that people who have great voices are able to rise above the muck, right? So, but what's happening is, if you really look at the YouTube stars who are super successful, and if you look at guys like PewDiePie, who is a commentator, you know, big YouTube star who comments on video games, I think, you know, there is a little bit of a focus on the quick hit bubblegum stuff. Like there's a little bit of the sophisticated content, I think, can get lost because it's a little bit harder to, or it takes a little bit longer to absorb than, you know, some of the bubblegum stuff on YouTube. And so I think that's why it's important for, you know, for respected, curated platforms to keep highlighting independent film and independent voices.
I just want to ask, if you are releasing your material online, because there's so much content, how do you separate yourself now? You know, there was a time when you came out of Sundance, you got your film distributed, you're in theaters, you're separate from everybody else now. But because now there's all this DIY work, do-it-yourself filmmaking that's on YouTube and Vimeo and all this, how do you separate yourself from like the millions of other people out there that are putting content out?
Right. And that's why FilmBuff is here. And I think there's a couple things. One, there's calculated expenditure on P&A. How do you create buzz? How do you use PR and you know, both reviews and ad placement, clips? How do you plant and seed those around the internet, in social media as well, to create awareness for your film? And it's an art form, and I think it's something that the studios don't know how to do yet, and it's something that I think the indie world actually has had. We've been a step ahead of studios because we've been focusing on digital for much longer than they have. So it's how do you not just create buzz, but also figure out how to convert people to paid viewership as quickly as possible. So, it's an art for sure. But I also think, just having content that people are going to talk about, and that when they leave the theater and when they walk away, they want to tell someone about it. I mean, that, to us, those are the films that really resonate online. Or, having films that have a built-in audience, or whether it's a band or a YouTube star, or celebrity backing, or someone who has a voice and who has a following online, to be able to leverage those, that digital voice into actual, viewership of content, or paid viewership of content, is something that we specialize in.
Yeah, one of the, speaking of niche audiences, one of the examples I thought was really great in probably the last decade, a guy named Sandy Dubowski made a film called Trembling Before God, and it was about the gay, Orthodox, Hasidic Jewish community. And they were screening it by Union Square, and I went down there, and the line was around the corner. I mean, I think that's such a great example of niche marketing. They didn't have to have, Brad Pitt in their movie to get those seats filled, which I think is awesome. I just think that's so great. Anyway, so what I wanted to ask you in terms of the future of cinema, with all of this material now online, how feasible is it for an indie filmmaker to actually have a sustainable career right now?
Yeah. You know, I think it's very feasible, and you know, we work with independent filmmakers who are, you know, who are really being rewarded both financially and I think, you know, it just socially and you know, in terms of having people appreciate their film and you know, their careers are flourishing, despite, you know, the influx of tons of volume into the market right now. And I think there's a couple factors. One, I think filmmakers are getting smarter. I think it's getting less expensive, you know, with drone technology, etc. We had a film called Spring that we released with Draft House this year that did exceptionally well. And, you know, the budget was smaller because, you know, you recognize you don't need to spend millions and millions of dollars on a film to create great content these days. And so I think people are becoming a lot more efficient. And so as that efficiency rises, you know, the bar that you need to cross to be able to have a profitable film, you know, it goes down. So that's one thing that's happening. And, you know, another thing that's happening is that they're, you know, it's not just about theatrical box office gross. And while you might not be making as much money in the box office these days, or at least have that big, like, you know, $15–20 million figure to look at, you can't, two things. One, you can make more money in multiple windows, right? You can make money off iTunes and Amazon, you know, Amazon cable, VOD, paid transactional VOD and EST. You can make money in ad-supported VOD when that window is appropriate. You can sell, you know, exclusive windows to Netflix and Amazon Prime and you know, Sundance and all types of subscription VOD platforms. You know, there are folks like Condé Nast and Vice who are licensing content for, you know, online viewership. For, you know, so if you can create enough windows at different times during a film's life cycle, there are a lot of different bites of the apple and ways to make money. You know, in addition to theatrical, in addition to, you know, DVD and airline and educational and libraries and all the other ways to make money out there. Also, the consumption of English content viewership is going up in, you know, places like China, where perhaps they would only be interested in Hollywood films and, you know, maybe a couple documentaries. Now, you know, their taste for independent cinema is on the rise, and things like American humor are translating. So the market's bigger, the amount of opportunities to take bites out in different windows is bigger, and yeah, I think there are a lot of different ways you can make money still, and you know, we're really enjoying the market and the climate as it stands right now.
Awesome. I'm just going to ask one last quick question here. Yeah. For me, there's nothing beats the cinema experience, but more than that, the film festival experience. When you watch a movie that's powerful in the theater with 200 people, and then afterwards, the people that were involved with the film come up front and talk about it, and everybody cheers, and then there's a party afterwards. That whole experience is amazing to me, and I feel like VOD and digital and the whole online thing can't really take away from that. What's the future of the cinema experience? Is this movie theater experience still going to be around, or what's going to happen, do you think?
I think it's a good question, and it's one that I think Netflix will tell you it's gone. But I love going to the movies. I've been going to the movies since I was, since as early as I can remember. Yeah. You know, my dad would let me go see like rated R films like Commando when I was like 2 years old. So, you know, there's nothing like sharing a laugh or sharing, you know, fear or a moment with a bunch of people in a movie theater. But, you know, people used to think that theaters were going to be replaced by the home theater experience, but I think with recent technological advances like Oculus Rift and that virtual reality experience, I mean, that's the next thing, right? Yeah. Is you put on your goggles or your glasses and you experience seeing a movie either in 360 degrees with no screen or on a huge virtual screen, and that will be more intense of an experience, most likely, than even being at like an IMAX 3D film. So it's going to be really, really hard to compete with that from an experiential point of view. And I do think that social media and, you know, there will be ways to kind of share that experience via social media. Is cinema dead? It'll never be dead. And I certainly hope it's not dead, but there is going to be a lot of downward pressure, I think, on ticket sales. Oh, yeah. and that's going to result in fewer theaters, and so it's going to become more of a niche thing, I think, unfortunately. But I think that can be a positive change, and I think there'll be some really cool new ways to experience art because of it. So I'm looking forward to it.
Scott, thank you so much for speaking to us today. I really appreciate it. See you guys at the 12th Annual Big Apple Film Festival, November 4th to the 7th at Village East Cinemas. Thank you.